Hello there.
How are you
going? Welcome to day 4.
Yes.
Is it day 4 of Neurodiversity Celebration Week and our LinkedIn lives that we're doing every day this week? So if you're still with us, yay! Thanks so much for being here. We're really happy to see you. Again, as we've done on other days, if there's any problems with the sound or anything like that, please just let us know.
Yeah.
We do have a microphone that we can plug in if there are any issues with the sound, as we had on the first day, which we still haven't worked out why that happened. That was very annoying, wasn't it?
So we've been talking about a different subject every day this week. And, as I'm sure if you've watched any of our lives, we're really passionate about neurodiversity and putting a focus on the emotional and mental well-being of neurodiverse adults. But it also impacts the people around them. So today we really wanted to talk about how can you support, lovely, thank you, Georgia. It's always good to know that the sounds are working.
I'll put the little slide back on so we've got the name up.
How can you support neurodiverse whānau and colleagues? So let's dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are lots of really easy ways that you can support the people that in your life that are neurodiverse. And for me, I have a lot of neurodiverse family. I also work with a lot of
colleagues.
Neurodiverse people. So there is a lot of neurodiversity in my life. I am actually neurotypical, but I do have a really great understanding of what neurodiversity is. We've already touched on the fact that, there's a lawnmower started up. That's great.
I'm just going to go and close out the window. Excuse me.
So we've already touched on the fact that neurodiversity is a cognitive difference. It's not a choice. We know that. The neurotypical brain works very differently from the neurodiverse brain. And so we just have to remember that it's not something that a neurodiverse person is choosing to have. It's not a way of behaving that's a choice. It literally cannot be controlled. It literally is just the way that your brain operates. And it's a consistent way of processing information and the world around you and just differently. And that comes, as we've touched on, I think, a couple of times this week, with lots of talents and lots of challenges. And I think we touched on some of the talents yesterday, didn't we? Around,
we did.
What are some of the real positives of being neurodiverse in the workplace and how you can tap into those. But just remembering that sort of ADHD person that you're interacting with, be it a child, be it a colleague, be it a family member, they're not choosing to behave in a particular way. The behaviors that you might be seeing that are a little bit challenging are not a choice. They just are the way that the neurodiverse brain works.
They're not trying to be frustrating on purpose.
Absolutely. So we've got some little slides today, which is quite exciting.
It is. So we'll just get them up. And I think, this is what we really want to talk about, is the power of the partnership, and understanding is really key. Having the awareness of what's behind the behaviors is really important. And, when you can understand, the neurodiverse person can understand the neurotypical strengths, and the neurotypical strengths can understand the neurodiverse person's strengths, that really is an amazing place. And that's what we have in our partnership,
Absolutely.
That's why our business works so well, because we understand what our strengths and our weaknesses are, don't we?
And we can recognize them in each other as well, sometimes before you can recognize them yourself. So I know for me, I'm quite an introvert. And for me, doing all of this stuff this week, doing all of these lives and doing all the presentations and going to organizations and talking as much as we have this week is exhausting. It's really, really exhausting. And I find it quite difficult. And so, Vanessa can recognize that in me before even I've really realized it myself. And then we can build in ways to manage that and vice versa. There are things that happen that are to do with your neurodiversity that I can see happening, even when sometimes you can't recognize that they're happening. Yeah. So having that understanding is really, really important. And when you don't have that understanding, and if you've got like a team of people and there's a couple of neurodiverse people or one neurodiverse person, and you don't have that understanding, it can actually lead to a lot of resentment and a lot of upset.
And conflict within the team,
absolutely,
can't it? Because I think there is that perception out there that those simple things, the neurodiverse person should be able to do. And in fact, we were just talking about this before we came on live, about how Becky's finding all of this presenting and being external kind of tiring, whereas I'm thriving on it because it's my extrovert nature, my ADD. I'm loving it. However, what I haven't loved is all the writing that we've had to do for all the presentations. And we were just talking about that, weren't we?
Yes.
For me, writing them is the most difficult bit. And for Becky, the presenting is a bit more tricky.
And I like the writing because I could just sit quietly and write and no one needs to talk to me. So it's all good. But, it's just that having that understanding about your different talents and your different strengths is really important. And we don't want there to be any resentment. We don't want people to think, oh, why are they getting special treatment? Or, why are they being treated differently? And why don't they have to work as hard as I have to work? Just, knowing that a neurodiverse person is working really hard, even if it doesn't look like they're working really hard.
Yeah.
So improving your understanding and awareness is important. Remembering that, shall I take us off so that you can see all the words properly? Every neurodiverse person is different. So just because you have got some awareness around neurodiversity, you're not going to see the same things in everybody. No. And remembering to support the person and not the diagnosis.
Yeah. And that's one of the key things that we talk about is supporting the person and not the diagnosis. Now, actually, really interestingly, we've had a lot of questions about diagnosis today, haven't we, in our presentations? And what we wanted to share with you is that it can be really challenging if you get a diagnosis. It can also be really challenging if you don't know you're neurodiverse and you don't have a diagnosis. And the thing is, we sometimes get asked is, oh, well, are people maybe kind of like faking their neurodiversity? Yeah. Are they making it worse than it really is to get special treatment or to get out of doing something? And actually, the answer is yes, maybe. Maybe someone is like kind of accentuating some of the challenges of their ADD to get out of something. But I was interested when I was asked this question yesterday, because why would you fake being neurodiverse? I think for me, it was a really interesting thing, because if you can't really fake it, to be honest. And why would you want to fake something that actually makes your life a bit more tricky? And I would also say, if you're thinking that person's faking neurodiversity, maybe check yourself a little bit, are they really, why are you thinking that they're faking it? Is it because it's not showing up in the way that you think it should show up? Is it that it's, you don't recognize it as the standard sort of way of showing up? They don't struggle with reading and writing, so they can't possibly be dyslexic, Yeah. As we talk about all the time, neurodiversity looks very different to what you really think it looks like. We take a very narrow educational academic view of neurodiversity, and it is actually much more complex than that. And I think, this session today is how can you support your whānau and colleagues? So this is a really big one. Believe them. When someone tells you they are neurodiverse, believe them. I can still remember the time, and I think I've shared in some of the presentations we've done that, I discovered my son was dyslexic and he was 8, and we were like celebrating it, telling him how amazing he was, how great it was. He had a different way of thinking. And then when I discovered my own dyslexia, I was too ashamed to tell anybody. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my friends. And in fact, I can still really vividly remember there was, I was out at dinner with 2 girlfriends, and I actually told them, I said, oh my gosh, I think I'm dyslexic. One of them went, oh my gosh, really? And the other one went, don't be silly, you can't be dyslexic. So that there, it was, I can still remember it. And I think that's the thing, just believe them, because actually it takes a huge amount of courage to let someone know that you think you might be neurodiverse. It actually puts you in quite a vulnerable place. Absolutely, it really does. Please just believe them. Yeah, And there is a stat around somewhere that says something like 77% of people that think they're neurodiverse are neurodiverse. So just because it doesn't look like you think it should look, doesn't mean that they're not neurodiverse. Yeah. And the next one is patience. So it's one of the biggest gifts that you can give any neurodiverse person, absolutely. Isn't it? And thankfully, Becky has a huge amount of patience. This would be my sort of almost like my biggest thing to advise you or to sort of counsel you to develop is patience when you're working with neurodiverse people, because
it's not always easy. It can be frustrating. Things don't always go the way you think they're going to go, and you have to have the patience to deal with that. Allowing a neurodiverse person the space to express their thoughts and their ideas is enormous. But also, not only that, a lot of neurodiverse people, especially if they're ADHD, will struggle with triggers, and they'll be different for everybody. It might be, Vanessa's very invested in lighting, so she likes to spend a lot of time setting up all the lighting for everything that we do. I couldn't care less. It doesn't matter to me at all, but I know it's important to her, and it's something that's really, really matters to her. And so I have to give her the time. So that means we have to build in a little bit of extra time. If we're going to do a presentation or we're going to record a video, we have to allow time for that to happen, because if it doesn't happen, what does it feel like?
Yeah, well, for me, because I'm so sensory, I'm really, really aware that if the light isn't right on us, or I can't see, or maybe it doesn't look, I just keep getting distracted by it and I won't be able to function. So, but it took us a little while to figure that out, didn't it?
It did, absolutely. Because I was like, what are you making such a fuss about lighting for? It's not that important.
But because of my neurodiverse brain, it is. But, the point here isn't about lighting. What it is about, it's recognizing that, working in partnership, and exactly right, that patience. But I would also say patience actually goes the other way as well, and we haven't actually put this on the slide, but,
Are you going to go off-piste?
I am going to go off-piste. But what I would say is I've got to be aware that, Becky's brain doesn't work as fast as mine. And actually, I need to be patient with her sometimes as well, and allow that kind of time for you to think about the process, because I can see it immediately. So patience, I would say it's more on the neurodiverse side, neurotypical person, to be patient, but it is also for me. And I know I had this with my son, my son is dyslexic, but we have quite a different energy level. His is lower than mine. And actually, I have learnt now I need to be patient with him. So when we're getting ready to go somewhere, my ADD will be like, quick, and he doesn't work at that speed. So actually, I had to learn even to be patient with that. And as soon as I did, it made the biggest difference.
My ADD son is exactly the same. He does not rush. He has one speed, and that speed is slow. And that used to drive me up the wall. But I have learned that I'm not gonna change it, and by trying to change it, I'm just gonna get frustrated and annoyed with him. So I might as well just accept it. I really believe in picking your battles, especially with ADHD children. He's 16, nearly 17, so he's not a baby anymore. There are lots of battles that we can have. Some of them are just not worth having. So I just have the patience to let them go and just be like, okay, that is just the way he is, and I have to accept I can change. I can choose to change my interpretation of his behavior. He can't choose to change the way that his brain works.
So, patience.
Really important. So
now,
next.
Go on.
No, you don't have to fix neurodiversity. So, neurodiversity doesn't need to be fixed. Unfortunately, as we've talked about many times, neurodiversity is seen as a negative thing. It's seen as a problem and something that we need to solve, or that we need to provide accommodations for, so that the neurodiverse person can be more neurotypical, which, by the way, is never going to happen. So you don't have to fix it. The neurodiverse person understands their own challenges better than anyone else. So really just speaking to that person and asking them, what can I do to support you? How can I help you? Being open and allowing that conversation to take place is really important.
And I think, it's interesting, because this is where the awareness that we talk about so much, and this is the partnership, yes, as a colleague or a family member of someone who's neurodiverse, you need to increase your awareness. But actually, it can be really helpful if the neurodiverse person increases their own awareness too. Because, if you'd asked me earlier on in my journey, what can I do to support you? I'd be like, oh, I don't actually really know. Now I can say, different things, like I need 5 minutes to set the lighting up before a live. So actually, if you ask someone how you can support them and they don't know the answer immediately, maybe just keep working on that a little bit between the two of you.
Absolutely. And I think it is about raising that awareness so that you can work out what needs what changes need to take place. But I think, as you were saying, it is about the neurodiverse person doing the work in themselves as well, so that they're in a place to accept that help, to accept those accommodations. Because, you know, we've talked about that a few times, haven't we, about how difficult it can be. And we were just talking this morning on a presentation that we gave about the rejection sensitivity dysphoria. That's what it's called, isn't it? Dysmorphia. Anyway, dysmorphia, sorry. I'm not very good with these terms. And, you know, how difficult that is to manage and how hard it can be when someone's trying to help you, you know, and it can come across as being criticized, or, you know, you can feel very sensitive to that help. And the other person might just be trying to support you and to be successful, but it doesn't feel like that from yourself, you know, coming from the inside. So it is really important that the neurodiverse person works on themselves so that they are in that position to be able to accept the help that's on offer in the organisation. I'm just going to say one more thing.
Sorry.
We did a presentation with an organisation many times last year, and they're a fabulous organisation, but on their intake form, they ask, are you neurodiverse? Do you need any extra help? And this was sort of an educational establishment. And we're just saying to them, it's really great that you've got that on there, but don't assume that people are going to say I'm neurodiverse, you know, because if you've been through school and you've been told, as we've said, you know, so many times that you're wrong, and I think we're getting to that in a minute, you're not going to be the one that's going to say, yeah, look, I'm neurodiverse, I need help. Give it to me. I want to stand out and be different. It's just not going to happen. You know, I mean, if you accept yourself, it will.
And I'm just going to jump in here and quickly say, it's an interesting thing to think about, that you don't have to fix neurodiversity, especially in your children. So what I would say is we spent a lot of time and money and effort trying to support my dyslexic son. But actually, if I look back, a lot of it was, I'm trying to fix you. There's something wrong with you. So I think that's quite an interesting thing to think about when you are looking at support for your child. Look at the belief and the way that the support is handled, because I can now see a lot of the things that we did with my son were actually, there's something wrong with you. We need to help you be more this, you know, this way. So yeah, I think it's a really complex subject. We could spend hours talking about this.
It is a complex subject, you know. Absolutely.
The other thing we would say to help support your colleagues in whānau is normalize accommodations. And here we go. This kind
there's the stat. There you go.
Ties in nicely to what I was just saying about my son. You know, you'll be working with adults who throughout their educational time, you know, there's a stat that says on average a dyslexic child is told 20,000 times at school that they've got it wrong. But what that child hears is, I am wrong. So what that neurodiverse adult thinks is, I am wrong, isn't it? You know?
Absolutely.
And what that does is it means there's a huge fear of judgment. You know, there's a huge fear of actually putting my challenges out there, because you are really scared that you're going to be judged for it. And that is a really deep level fear, you know?
It is, absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, that's not something that you can just choose not to do.
No.
That's not something that you can just say, oh, well, I'm just going to not be worried about what people say to me. It's just not going to happen. And like we said, you know, putting your hand up and saying that I'm the one that needs the special accommodations, it's going to be really hard. Change to this view, and then they can see both of us.
Oh, there, well done you.
There we go.
So, you know, something you can do that's going to support the people that you work with and the people in your lives is normalize accommodations. You know, we always advocate that actually accommodations that you make for neurodiverse individuals can actually help everybody.
Absolutely.
And then it takes away that, oh, well, why am I being singled out? Why do I need special help? You know, why am I the one that has to do things differently? Because that
What's
can actually be
that stat you remember about visual processing working for you know it.
So there's a book by Linda Silverman called Upside Down Brilliance, and in that she says that visual learning methods actually work for 75% of individuals. So that visual learning will really be the language of neurodiverse individuals, but it works for 75% of people. So, you know.
Absolutely.
So we all have talents and we all have challenges. And I think, you know, any accommodations that you make, just kind of maybe don't look at them at just focusing them on one group of people.
Yeah.
Maybe just make them available.
Yeah. Because again, that's sort of like talking about, isn't it, that that sort of narrow understanding of neurodiversity. It's like, if you're dyslexic, you need speech to text.
Yeah.
Or if you're ADHD, you need to be able to wear your headphones or whatever. You know, there's some very narrow set of accommodations that people tend to give depending upon the condition. And as I think we said in one of the previous slides, you know, we always talk about supporting the person and not the diagnosis. Most neurodiverse people have many different conditions, so they won't just be experiencing one, like Vanessa, you have dyslexia and ADHD. So there will always be that comorbidity, or I was not always, but most of the time be that comorbidity going on, which means that they will have the amazing talents, but they will also have the challenges of those different neurodiversities. And it can be a real melting pot of what's going on for them. So, you know, I really recommend you don't make any kind of assumptions. And I don't know if you've seen that video that's doing the rounds at the moment around
that's great,
making assumptions. It's such a good video. It's just, you know, making assumptions about what a person can do means that they then are not able to be pushed to achieve more. And that is very much the case for neurodiverse people.
Yeah.
People assume that you can't do whatever.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, you know, when I say I'm dyslexic, maybe you're assuming that means that I can't read and spell very well. And I think it's been interesting. In one of the presentations we do, we say to people, who do you think is neurodiverse? And sometimes people will think it's Becky because maybe you've like tripped over a word or something's happened, right? So it's really interesting. People assume that because I'm dyslexic, I can't read and I can't spell. In fact, it's completely opposite. In fact, I'm the best speller in the family because I visualize how words look. So it is really interesting about those assumptions. And I think, you know, supporting your colleagues and whānau, you know, it really can mean find the hidden sides of neurodiversity. Don't just think, oh, my child's dyslexic, they're going to struggle with reading. No, you know, they might read really well. Really look into what's going on for that person. And as we've said, support the person in front of you, not the diagnosis. I think that's probably one of the most powerful things, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it is really important that we all explore the talents and the challenges.
There you go. There you go. We'll come back to us.
I think yesterday we talked a little bit about those personality tests and things like that.
Yes,
we
did.
They can be not always that helpful when it comes to neurodiversity because of the inconsistency of it. And so, you know, it can be challenging to know when someone's neurodiverse. But I think if you've just got the awareness, and hopefully by watching these videos this week, you're getting even more awareness of what neurodiversity really looks like. It will just enable you to slightly alter your behavior. And we always say in the presentations that we give that just tiny, small changes can make a huge difference to a neurodiverse person. So if you think, someone that we were working with yesterday was talking about how they're constantly feeling like they're waiting for the knife to fall, or, you know, they're always waiting for something bad to happen. And that constant feeling of stress and anxiety is enormously difficult for them to manage. And, you know, that's not a great place to be as a neurodiverse person. As a neurotypical person, you can ease that a little bit by understanding, by listening, by being there, by asking the right questions, by not making assumptions. These are all things that you can do, and things that I do every day to enable us to work more effectively together.
You know, one little tip I would say, and this goes for children and adults, is, you know, often if you've got a neurodiverse child, sometimes they'll just need to tell you what they're thinking about. And actually, you can't get them to move on until they've kind of downloaded what they're thinking about, you know. And that's where the patience comes in, right? But actually, if you just allow that person that 5 minutes to get it out of their head, then they'll actually be able to move on to the next task, whether that's a child or an adult.
It's so true.
You know?
It's so true.
And I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because we always think, oh, we'll give our children time, right? I'll give my friends time. But when they're kind of like, you know, Becky, we start every day with Becky having to listen to the 1,000 ideas that I've had. usually while I'm in the shower, actually. But anyway, and Becky, it's amazing because as a neurodiverse adult, I've spent so much of my life trying to keep that inside. Whereas we've both learned now, if I say my 5 minutes of ideas, then I can get on with the rest of the day.
Absolutely. And it makes a world of difference, I'm going to tell you, if Vanessa doesn't get the opportunity to say her idea, then she's constantly thinking about it and constantly exploring it inside her head, which means that the things that we actually need to get done don't get done. So it's those, it's that ability to, we were talking, weren't we, before about the ability to focus. And the ability to focus is enormous, actually, for an ADHD particularly person, but not when those other distractions are going on, not when the lighting's not right, or when you haven't got your ideas out, or, the room is too dark, or, there are lots of different things that need to be in place. And so, like on one of the other slides that we had earlier, it's about building the time in to allow that to happen. Yeah. So I was going to go back to the slide.
And actually, in one of the presentations we did yesterday, one of the employees was amazing and got up and talked. And he was talking about, how sometimes even like the tag in the back of the shirt, if it's not quite right, that's where your focus goes. You can't focus on anything else. So it's just realizing that person's not being really difficult by, sitting there fidgeting. You're much better to just give them a bit of time and space. They can do what they need to do, and then they'll be able to focus.
So it is about the understanding. And another one that sort of just popped into my mind while we're talking is about like my ADHD son. If I go into his room and he's doing a piece of work, he will often be on YouTube, on Discord, and doing his work and listening to Spotify. And I used to say to him, turn all of that other stuff off. You cannot possibly be concentrating on what you're doing. Now, whether he is or whether he's not, I'm not entirely sure. But I have learned that he actually needs other things going on at the same time to enable his brain to engage with the piece of work that he's supposed to be doing. And telling him to turn it all off, it's just not possible. It's just not possible for him. He can't sit there in silence like I can and concentrate. So just understanding that not everyone's the same as you. Everyone needs their own sort of different ways of working, and you just need to give them the patience to be able to do that.
And potentially finding those different ways of working, I think, it's just increasing your awareness, like we said, and supporting your colleagues and your family looks different, but really patience is one of the biggest things, and normalizing those accommodations, as we've just talked about, and what other
so I'm just going to pop up the code for the Resilient Minds program, because we haven't done that for a couple of days. So, this is our fantastic program that's 6 weeks long. It really explores neurodiversity. So if you've got a neurodiverse friend, family member or colleague or someone like that who really is open to exploring their neurodiversity, really understanding what's going on for them, and then knowing how to work with it rather than feeling controlled by it. Now, as we know, we've said it's not a choice. You cannot stop being neurodiverse, but you can learn to understand and accept your neurodiversity so that you can show up differently in the world, and you can get rid of that feeling of constantly waiting to make a mistake, constantly waiting to be found out, constantly waiting for people to sort of discover you and your mistake. So it can be different. So if you just want to scan the QR code, it will take you to the page, which is all about the Resilient Minds program. And we are doing a special offer for March. If you sign up during March, you'll get to 15% off the price.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that comment. Now, I'm not exactly too sure how to pronounce, so I'm just going to put my glasses on. So, Kamal, I hope I'm saying that correctly. I think you're right. There are intersectionalities, and, patience and empathy are key. They really are key. And I think, empathy is something that gets talked about a lot. What I would say is neurodiverse individuals have amazing empathy, actually. It's a real natural talent of ours. And I think, how do you create patience and empathy? How do you create that? Well, for me, you take a step before it and you really get to understand the struggles and understand that person in front of you. That's where we talk about support the person, not just the diagnosis.
Absolutely, yeah. So hopefully you've learned some things today, and we've helped you to have better relationships with the neurodiverse people in your life. As I say, I've got a lot of them in my life, and it's taken me a long time to work out the best ways of working so that we can all thrive together.
Yeah,
and
because that's what it's all about, really, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not about one person doing well and the other person having to accommodate. It's about meeting in the middle and working out ways that work for everybody.
Yeah.
So hopefully we've helped with that a little bit today, and we'll see you tomorrow for our final one. What are we doing tomorrow?
So the last one we're doing is, can you be proud of your neurodiverse brain, and what can you do to support your own well-being?
So we'll see you back here tomorrow at 2:00 for the final live Neurodiversity Celebration
It's
Week.
going to be so sad, isn't it?
I'm going to go and have a sleep. I'll be fine.
Okay, everybody, have a great day.
Bye.